latest Sky Armada of the war dumped 3,500 tons of explosives on German naval targets and submarine yards at Hamburg, Wilhelmshaven, Bremen, and nearby Farge. They left smoke and flames rising thousands of feet above the great cities of northern Germany, and first reports told of good results with direct hits on German ships and submarines. Radio Atlantic announced that 58 submarines were destroyed. It was not good flying weather, but planes of the three tactical air forces managed to get off the ground for more than 2,000 sorties to boost the Allied total for the day to more than 5,000. This included bombers and fighters, which ranged up from Italy to pound targets in Austria in support of the Russians. Bad weather held them on the ground last night, but those mosquito bombers of the RAF were out again tonight, pounding Berlin for the 38th time in 39 nights. On the top of the long Russian front, Hitler suffered ironical defeat. Danzig, the Baltic naval base that gave him an excuse for invading Poland in 1939, fell to Red Army troops, and the Russians hoisted the Polish flag over the one-time free port. This came after a savage three-day battle in the streets, during which 49,000 of Danzig's German defenders were slain or captured. About 500 miles to the south, Red Army troops drove into Austria below Vienna. The punch came at the apex of a southern offensive front that has been widened to some 200 miles and threatens to cut off the Reich from Nazi forces remaining in Yugoslavia and Italy. More than 730 towns were engulfed as two Soviet armies ripped through disorganized German defenses for a top gain of 31 miles between the Yugoslav border and central Czechoslovakia. While these triumphs were being scored on the flanks, the German radio finally got around to admitting the fall of the Oder fortress of Kustrin, 38 miles east of Berlin. Its capture was announced by Moscow 19 days ago. The final conquest of the Gdynia-Danzig port area is important because it gives the Russians a great water supply base 200 miles from the Berlin front. It also frees the powerful Second White Russian Army for the drive on the German capital. A dispatch from Ankara says, Hitler's SS troops are ruling Vienna with an iron hand after ruthlessly putting down peace demonstrations launched by thousands of women. At the same time, the Moscow radio tells of a German troop mutiny in Copenhagen. It says they revolted when they were ordered to the Oder sector of the Russian front, but heavy clashes resulted and the SS toughies who fought the mutineers were forced to retreat. Meanwhile, there was a growing note of urgency in the appeals of Nazi leaders as they harangued Germans in the shrinking Inner Reich to stand fast and fight to a finish. Bad weather stalled ground action on the Italian front again today, but Mediterranean-based tactical planes managed to resume their offensive against Nazi supplies and escape routes from Italy. Fleets of fighters and fighter bombers blasted targets in the Brenner Pass and other objectives in northern Italy. A dispatch from Vatican City says the German government has begun functioning at Eichstätt, a small town in the Bavarian Alps, after quitting Berlin. And Kurt Dietmar, official commentator for the German High Command, conceded. Receiving end of a mighty blow again today. For the 8th consecutive day, warships and planes of the Pacific Fleet blasted the vital Ryukyus, while superforts bludgeoned Nagoya and Singapore, and American troops in the Philippines invaded Negros Island. After landing on the number 4 island of the Philippines, the Yank forces punched 14 miles northeast, captured the Bacolod airdrome, and pounded to the outskirts of Bacolod, the island capital. This leaves the Japs in unchallenged possession of only one large island of the archipelago, Bohol, east of Negros. Other units captured tiny Caballo Island and Manila Bay, making 32 islands which have been wrenched from the hands of the enemy. On Cebu, American forces made contact with guerrillas and are now advancing southward from the capital to clear the lower part of the island. Throughout all the Visayan Islands of the Philippines, General MacArthur said the Japs appear bewildered and their defense is collapsing rapidly. Meanwhile, Tokyo reported not one, but 2 big task forces operating only a few miles off Japan proper. The enemy launched a desperate torpedo boat attack against the fleet in the Ryukyus and lost 4 of the small craft to naval gunfire. The foe struck back weakly in the air, losing 17 planes to our fighters and ships' guns, while another 15 were destroyed on the battered Ryukyu Island airdromes. Admiral Nimitz announced that big guns of fast battleships ranged off the important island chain that guards the southern approaches to Japan, pouring shells into shore installations, while coveys of carrier planes continued their pinpoint attacks on Japanese airfields and ports. 2 fleets of B-29s joined the sea and air slugfest against Nippon's crumbling empire. One roared out from the Marianas to blast Nagoya, the enemy's chief aircraft production center, while another took off from India to rain firebombs on oil storage areas at Singapore. Back home, a Navy communique reveals that American submarines rang the bell in recent forays against Jap shipping when they sank a large aircraft carrier, 2 destroyers, 2 escort vessels, and 6 cargo vessels. The Navy doesn't say where the carrier was sent to the bottom, but chances are it was in or near Japan's home waters, inasmuch as the enemy fleet hasn't tiptoed out of its backyard since last fall. In only one area were the Japs able to make a showing. Chung King says our 14th Air Force evacuated and demolished its important air bases in the Lao Hokau area 4 days ago, as Jap armored columns broke through Chinese ground defenses to the outskirts of the town in northern Hubei province. Yank airmen knew the Jap drive was in the making 4 weeks ago, but were stymied in efforts to halt it because their planes were held on the ground by bad weather. Since the evacuation, they have twice bombed the airfields from which they carried out damaging sweeps against enemy communications in north-central China. Over a period of 2.5 years, Major General Chennault's hard-hitting flyers knocked out no less than 1,200 Jap locomotives. On the home front, the War Labor Board stepped into the coal wage dispute amid growing signs that the only way to prevent a nationwide strike is in the soft coal fields.